Oh, it's recording. It's recording. Holy shit, it's recording. So, if you've ended up at this video, you may or may not have come across something like this. This is a hybrid. Now, I've owned this motorcycle for almost 10 years, bought it new, in a crate, shipped to me, to a house that I uncrated, and this is what's left after 10 years. This is a hybrid 125 QH something something. Yeah. So, 10 years in, we're going to do a brief overview. We're going to look at some of the things on the bike and sort of things of interest, because this is a Chinese reproduction of a Honda, essentially. So, if you're not familiar with the topic, this is one of the key elements that makes it identifiable as a reproduction of a Honda, is this style of engine. Because this engine is a replica of a Honda 125, which would have, I think, formerly been known as like the Super Cub. So let's look at some interesting facets of this, how simple the bike is. If you notice, there's no plastics left on the bike because they were garbage, and, well, garbage doesn't hold up. That's the short story of it. So if you notice, normally the bike would have fairings that cover all of this and come up to the seat face and cover the battery and all the stuff that you'd actually want to get to. You'll also notice that the muffler can is not on the bike. That is actually laying over at the side of the garage. If we look at the amount of oil that seeps out of the engine through the breather tube, that's also good. Interesting little bike. They're fun. They don't go super fast. These are good for back road or city use. Sort of top out at about 50-ish mile per hour, 45 to 50-ish, depending on your weight and terrain. This bike has not led an easy life, I will admit. Ended up getting an aftermarket battery. A 9BS size fits these for aftermarket use. The stock battery was pretty much garbage after the first couple winters. Other things of interest. These do have ABS mechanical bits. So technically this does have like a half-assed ABS. You can still manage to lock it up. Some things to note on the build quality. The frame isn't that bad. I've not broken anything on the frame yet. I did manage to shear one of the bolts for the engine mount. Also, if we look at the high-grade nature of the carburetor assemblage in the air box, you'll notice that the air box is pretty much, the air cleaner is not used because of the great production quality. Now on the other side of the bike, we will notice that my turn signal's hanging off. All that stuff should be up here. I don't know why it came off or how it came off. I just know where it should be. So we got that. We've got our voltage regulator. I think this is the starter, because that's the turn signal mechanism up here, starter. Single shock rear. We've got a flow check valve dealie for the gas tank. Gas tank is underneath the seat. Holds like a gallon. For those of you more curious about these things, it is a 5-speed chain drive, yada yada. It is 124 cubic centimeters. Pretty much engines are almost maintenance free. As you can see, it's the super hybrid. If you look these up online, they're really hard to find any good information about. Pretty much things to consider when buying one of these are the tires probably need replaced. Those are hard to find. Finding brake pads are also hard to do because nobody knows anything about these still. This is a decade on. I ended up doing some match work and found EBC compatibles that fit in the rear brake caliper. I literally had to take the brake pads in and match them up by eyeball, and had to eyeball them, which was a lot of fun. The other thing you will end up needing to replace will probably be the clutch cable, because clutch cables are also interesting to find. If you look up on eBay, that is the only way I've found to actually find any of that stuff. And it's pretty much generic Chinese clutch cable for a 125 size. It'll probably work. And they're like, should be less than 20 bucks. But pretty much the failure mode for most of this stuff is they're a very noisy bike. The exhaust will want to fall off, aka the muffler. Tires are cheap, is one upside. They're easy to find. Inner tubes are easy to find. They are very tiny tires. Chain is more difficult to find and source because it's a smaller, like a 510 size or smaller than that. It's a tiny, anemic little chain on these. Sprockets still look good. This is a decade in. This has like 4,000 miles on it from doing the math. And within the first like 2,000 miles, pretty much all the plastics were literally vibrating apart, and all of the mounting facades and stuff that things actually screw and bolt through were actually coming apart. And all the rubber grommets are completely shot. If you have any questions specifically about the bike, I'd be more than happy to answer them. I haven't seen a whole lot of good information on the majority of this, but the shocking part is these are still pretty cheap. You can get these crated from a couple different spots or things similar to these. They make them much better now with a more standard classic styling instead of this racer crap handlebar style, which sort of sucks. They don't have a tack on this version. It does have a fuel indicator, a shift position indicator, a really crappy speedometer, and everything's in kph, which is garbage, and kilometers. So you have to do a lot of math and figure out stuff. They are a fun little bike. What I did to customize mine a little bit is I put off-road stuff on them. AKA, if you look, I ended up putting knobby tires on mine so I could also limp this thing off-roading for fun and sort of use it as a little crap explorer adventure bike for putzing around. And ended up fitting, what the heck were these? The Golden Boy by something. We can barely imprint date codes on these to save our lives. These are really cheap tires. If you look them up, these are made in Korea. I forget who the heck makes these. But on the rear of this, it is a 21 by 2.75. AKA a 2 3/4 inch by 17 inch. These are not rated for speed. I wouldn't worry about it. These bikes don't go fast anyways. Some other interesting bits. If you were to look at how the brake configuration's done, these these have set screws in them. They're very hard to get out. They're Allen head or hex head set screws that you have to pop out. And that's what will let you actually remove the set pins that mount into the backside of this, which actually hold the caliper on. These are real interesting to do, but very doable. Doing the tire on the rear is very fun. The slider adjusts suck because they use end cap rectangular bits to try and hold them in position correctly. Doing alignments is horrendous on this. The good news is you've got a rear reservoir for the brakes. The front reservoir is easy to deal with. What else is there of interest? For a cheap bike, it has disc front and rear brakes. The bike comes with a center stand. And it takes regular 87 octane. So pretty much if you change the oil and brake pads in these and you make sure that you've got brake fluid and a good battery, I've never been stranded by this piece of crap yet. Which is amazing. Now, I would recommend if you plan on owning one of these long term, I've already owned this longer than I anticipated, I'd consider buying a bigger bike, like a 250 or at least a 200cc bike. You get more bang for your buck, yada yada. They make some really awesome stuff now. China's sort of figuring out the motorcycle market and what they can export. And how good is it? But yes, as far as costs on this, super cheap to insure, super cheap to license, super cheap for tires. Pretty much all the disposable parts on here are pretty cheap. The most expensive thing I've thrown money away on are the brakes. It's like $30 for brakes for a set for the rear. That was shocking. That's one of the biggest